don't know if any of you have heard of this, but there's a group called the Green River Tribute, and they are a cover band for CCR, and they have a show coming up in, I believe, Mike, are they playing in Quakertown? Oh,
No, they are playing at the State Theater in Boyertown.
my mistake. Quakertown, Boyertown, those are too similar. I apologize for that.
That's
But we
okay.
have one of their guitarist and lead vocalist, Mr. Rick Noodles Horvath, on the show. Rick, are you there?
I'm here, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
It's our pleasure to have you. Okay, so we said you said is on your bio, you're the founding member of one of New York's top bands, Sore Thumb. You also started Green River Tribute. What made you want to start the band initially?
Well, I grew up with, the first band I grew up with was the Beatles. I guess everybody did.
Yes, everyone did.
My generation. But the first band I found on my own was Creedence Clearwater Revival, and I always enjoyed the music. And back in the old days, I'm dating myself, but to learn songs back then, you had to listen to it on the radio, wait for it to come up the following hour, get a little more of the song. And that's how we learned songs back then. But I always loved the music. And when some of my friends were putting tribute bands together about 5 years ago, the idea came to me that nobody's really doing a Creedence tribute. There was maybe one band up in Canada, but it seemed like a really good thing to do, being that I love the music so much. It just was a perfect match to get the idea going.
Oh, yeah, I'm a huge CCR guy. That's one of the many groups from that era that still permeate the airwaves today. And it said, so I guess I guess you just wanted to make it a CCR band just because of your undying love for them?
Yeah, it was great music. It's very dynamic music, very basic music, and just the way they have their moments on stage where they used to jam out some of the songs too was kind of a nice idea. Apart from the typical just kind of playing it like the record approach that a lot of bands do.
Oh, yeah, they sound very good live. They sound almost better live, I believe that. And how long have you guys been together? How long have you been playing and performing?
We started rehearsing back in 2005, so I guess early 2006 we started performing.
That's great. And have you ever performed at a college campus before?
Not with this band, no, but I have performed at colleges in the past.
Oh, really? Which ones?
Oh, gosh, you're going back the way that there's been so many that I've performed at all through the Northeast. I couldn't even tell you offhand.
Oh, that's great. Because hey, us here at Kutztown, we had our first concert this fall, and we would love to have more. And hey, having a CCR cover band, that'd be great. We have lots of rock here on KUR, and I'm sure CCR's played a lot. We would love to have you. So, okay, what songs there are a lot of songs CCR has played. What if you could pick like a couple that you really enjoy playing the most? Which ones do you enjoy?
Oh, gee, have you ever seen The Rain is a great song? Heard it through the grapevine. Hey Tonight. I mean, there's just so many. We've added a few new ones to the set. Ramble Tamble, which is kind of their swan song, I guess.
That's great. That's great. And I mean, like you mentioned, there's so many great songs there. And so, where do you usually play? I mean, you said you played in some college campuses. And you're from Boyertown. Do you usually play around the Montgomery County, Lehigh Valley area?
Not usually. No, we play a lot of casinos, a lot of theaters. We were just up in Warren, Pennsylvania, a couple of weeks ago. We've played down in Delaware quite a few times, down on the Jersey Shore. We're looking to get some shows back on Long Island. I have a couple things booked for the summer back in Long Island, which is where I'm from originally.
Oh yeah, the summer around the shore, they love cover bands. It's just a really popular thing to have. And I just have to ask this, Rick. It says your nickname is Noodles, and I know people have to have their stage name. Oh, it's a great stage name. I'm just curious, just where did you get the stage name from?
You want the real story or the embellished story that I tell people?
How about the real one first?
The real story was just something boring. A friend of mine and I were playing softball after school one day, and we gave each other nicknames like ball players would have. So that's kind of where it came from.
Ah, so just hey, for the sake of it, let's hear the embellished version.
Well, that's no, I can't say that over the air.
Oh, you did? Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that with us.
No. It's just so silly. Wouldn't make any sense.
That's great. So just so people would so our listeners could find out more about you. What's the best part about honoring and giving paying homage to such a great group like CCR?
The best part of it?
Yes.
Oh, I'd say the crowd reaction is really the first thing. We feel like we're almost playing at Woodstock in a sense, where the people are just they're just reacting so well to the performance, and sometimes they get dressed up in kind of like hippie attire if we're doing like a Woodstock concert reenactment or something. So it's kind of a really cool vibe. It really is.
Do you see a lot of I don't know if you can tell. Do you know what's the age range usually? Do you see? Do you see a lot of people in their 20s, 30s, or people that were older that were more younger during CCR's prime time?
Well, I would say it's a mix of all that, really. Mainly, mostly 30s and 40s, but we've seen some young faces in the crowd. Some children come to the shows, and unfortunately, we never have T-shirts to fit them, but. We sell them the next size they can fit in. We say this is good to sleep in. You can sleep in this like a pajama top.
Oh, I'm sure, and that's great that you have a good number of good age range around here. And so let's see. I'm checking on your website right now. Tour dates coming up. You do have one coming up in. Let's see, Boyertown. Wow, you have a lot of different ones. You have a lot coming up in the spring. I see. So I guess the spring and summer are the hot times for you to really play the most.
Yeah, the concert series. Yeah, when the concerts kick in and the festivals kick in, and of course the casinos all year round.
Oh, I'm sure, definitely. And okay, so we'll end on this. The show coming up is, sorry, Mike, what date? I'll just ask him. What date is the Boyertown show coming up?
I believe it's Saturday, right, Noodles?
Yes, it is. It's this coming Saturday.
And are there still tickets available for anyone who might want to go?
Tickets are still available. They're $10 in advance, $15 at the show.
And I'd like to throw in as well too. Sorry, this is Mike, the producer. That we have 12 tickets here actually, and if you call in and participate in the rest of Steve's show in any other capacity with the topic of the day, whatever that is, we'll hook you up with a pair of tickets to the show. How's that for a deal?
Yeah, that sounds great. And if those and just in case people wanted to purchase some, where would they find that? Would it be online? Is it at Ticketmaster?
Well, we have a link to the Boyertown Theater on our site at greenrivertributeband.com. They can go to the tour dates page, and there'll be a link to the theater there. I'm
looking at it right now. Okay, that's great. So, all right, we would like to thank you very much for coming on the show, Noodles.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate having you. Okay, that was Rick Noodles Horman of the Green River Tribute Band. They are a CCR cover band that will be playing in Boyertown this Saturday, and we appreciate them coming on the show.
And as we were just saying, if you call in and partake in any part of the rest of the show, we'll hook you up with a pair of tickets.
Hey, feel free to call in at 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more KU Live, where Nick Lawrence will be joining us.
Attention football fans, Tyler Werner here. Join me every Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. right here on Kutztown Radio as we are on the road to the NFL playoffs.
Playoffs?
Yes, playoffs. Can Coach Chip Kelly lead the Philadelphia Eagles to another division title this season and maybe more? We'll discuss right here on the Tyler Werner Show every Tuesday from 6 to 8 p.m. right here on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR.
Looking for exceptional research and fieldwork opportunities? The Chincoteague Bay Field Station is an environmental education facility located on the eastern shore of Virginia. We offer a variety of college courses each summer ranging from geology and biology to literature and marine science. For years, Kutztown University students have come to the field station to participate in cutting-edge research and gain practical experiences that help them secure a job in their field. Find out how you can get involved today at cbfieldstation.org. That's cbfieldstation.org.
If your child doesn't have health insurance, find out if you qualify for Pennsylvania's Children's Health Insurance Program. Hi, I'm State Senator Judy Schwank with a Pennsylvania Moment. CHIP provides health insurance for children up to age 18. For more information, log on to chipcoverspakids.com or call 1-800-986-KIDS. I'm State Senator Judy Schwank with a Pennsylvania Moment.
KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University. KUR Kutztown. Hey everyone, welcome back to KU Live. The time right now is about 2:11 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, Steve Majiri. We just had Rick Noodles Horvath of the Green River Tribute Band, which is a CCR cover band that we're playing this Saturday in Boyertown. And we have, I believe, 12 tickets for sale. If you are not for sale, that we'll be handing out. If you call in, we can give you a free pair of tickets. I'm sure they sound really great. And if you are interested, just call in 610-683-4859. That is 610-683-4859, and we can hook you up right here at KUR, at KU Live, should I say. But now we're moving on to our next topic. We, as I'm sure many people know, what's been going on in the news, the big story regarding the school, is that there's been an update in the whole the Kutztown and university football players that went to Bloomsburg last spring and were involved in a terrible brawl where they hospitalized someone named Jackie Lithgow, who's still hospitalized down in, I believe, the McGee Hospital in Philadelphia, where right now he has a good portion of his skull's been removed because of brain damage. Just to recap the story really quickly, and back in, I believe, April, what happened was 2 Kutztown football players went down to Bloomsburg. 4 of them went down to Bloomsburg University. There were Angel Cruz, Justin Weeder, Eric Condren, and Jake Wygant, and they were going to a fraternity party in Bloomsburg, and they were told to leave, and they refused to. And so what happened was one of them, Justin Weeder, threw a punch at Donald Hoover. Hoover is a member of the Bloomsburg fraternity, and Hoover was knocked back, and then, chaos ensued. Weeder started swinging other people, a brawl erupted, and they had to literally be pushed out as a group, and it spilled out in the streets, and that's when it really got ugly, when it just... when what happened was Jackie Lithgow, an innocent bystander, a member of the fraternity, tried to just simply get in the way and be a peacemaker. And then Angel Cruz, another one of the football players, cocked back and punched him right in the face, and it knocked him out cold, and he fell back, and his back of his head hit hard on the pavement and has been hospitalized ever since due to internal bleeding and is having trouble regaining basic motor functions. And Cruz right now has been in jail, and he is currently appeared in plea court in Columbia County after his first appearance, and then he was charged with aggravated assault, flight to avoid apprehension, simple assault, disorderly conduct, and harassment after an incident that happened on February 23rd. So he had 2 incidents that he was being charged for. But according to police, he struck Lithgow, causing him to fall and hit his head on the pavement, resulting in permanent brain damage. And this is from Cumberlink.com. And right now there's been a blog that's been giving updates on how Jackie's doing, and they told me they finally heard Cruz admit to the fact that he really kind of, in a moment of contrition, finally, apologized for his actions, and he pled guilty, and sentencing is soon to come, and we're certainly going to keep you posted on that. But we're here to talk about that. We just want to believe that what we want to get your thoughts on, like a lot of this story has come from a friend of mine on the football team who I'm not going to name. He told me that this kid Cruz, who is being charged on, or he could face almost 10 years in prison, depending on what happens. And he told me this kid had a really rough upbringing, no guidance, a real broken home, and they were young. And this was, late at night on a weekend. I'm assuming there was some alcohol involved, and it makes me think that this is a kid. And my friend told me that this is a kid. Should he really be charged as an adult? And that's a really interesting question, and here to help facilitate the conversation is our good friend from WEEU, Mr. Nick Lawrence. Thanks for coming to the show, Nick.
Hey, Steve. Good to be back with you.
Good to have you back.
I'm excited about this. It's a great topic, I think, especially because it hits home here at Kutztown, but also at every college probably across the country, because these issues come up all the time, and it's just this seemed to have gotten a lot of publicity where probably other incidents that take place don't get the kind of publicity it did. But it's a sad story. It's a sad case for everybody, the kids that were hurt as well as the kids that did the hurting.
Right. And 2 of the football players I mentioned weren't charged. Eric Condren and Jake Wygant, they had all charges dropped to them. But these 2, Cruz and Weeder, are both being held. Well, Weeder, his family posted a $100,000 bond, but Cruz is still being held in prison, and he's going to be facing sentencing. But, yeah, like you said, this is a really sad story. And one thing that I think I should really point out is that, like you said, this happens all the time on college campuses. People... these are young kids. They, will get a little loaded, and sometimes they make bad decisions, and that happens all the time. That's part of how you learn, how you realize what you should be doing is finding out what you shouldn't be doing, and sometimes something like this is the biggest lesson. But still, since this happens a lot, the reason it's getting the most publicity here is because this is a football player, an athlete, And this was on the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer. It went all the way to that big market. And it's unfortunate that the school I go to, the only time they make the front page of a newspaper is when it's in a negative light like that. But I understand it. There's an old saying my journalism professor says, if it bleeds, it leads, as sick as that is. But it's just really unfortunate that the school's been looked at like this because of the actions of one kid who was really not in the right mindset and just really made a horrible decision.
So, Steve, it's interesting that you talk about, it's all about judgment. It's all about people making judgments. And, before we went on the air, we were talking about, how the brain develops and when we're fully developed. So what I wrote down here, I wrote four bad judgments, and a fifth is a negative consequence. So let me just say these. The first bad judgment in my mind, if this is true, I don't know that any story actually reported definitely, but there's a good assumption this could be true, is that they were drinking. First of all, they're underage drinkers, okay? That's the first bad judgment.
Right.
The second bad judgment I wrote down is that they, according to the articles that I read, they went to this party, as you said, but they were actually crashing a party. So that was bad judgment number two.
What were they doing? That's what I'm wondering. What were these kids doing in Bloomsburg? Because what they're going to you're thinking they're going to let a bunch of kids from another school go to a random fraternity party?
Yeah, so the movies Wedding Crashers, and what the consequences of that was stupid,
we
right?
do.
So now we have party crashers here. Then the third bad judgment was not leaving the party when they were asked to leave. They get their back up against the wall, and you're disrespecting me. Why should I have to leave? I'm not going to leave. And then the fourth bad judgment was throwing the punches. And of course, now we know the sad consequences of what happened to
people get hurt.
The boy that's in the hospital, and Hoover got hurt, and then what happens to these guys? What happens to Angel Cruz's life now as a result of the hurt that he's put on him?
He will have a very difficult and tumultuous life for the rest of the years he's on this planet because of that decision. And it's unfortunate, but that's why we need to bring up it. My friend thinks he shouldn't be held as accountable. He thinks and I'm not saying
he should not be, or
he should. He shouldn't be held as accountable as the media is portraying him. Because yes, he will serve jail time. I think he needs to. He needs to learn his lesson somehow. But people are thinking some judges are saying they're trying to get this guy the maximum sentence of like 10 to 15 years, and some are thinking this is some dumb kid who, like we said, his brain isn't fully developed. And I'm just talking about the premature stages. He's not technically an adult yet. Of course, he's been in jail, but still, when he made the bad decision, he was just a young 20-year-old kid, and he also had a very, very rough upbringing with no guidance. And this was his only opportunity, and was never taught about right from wrong.
It's always one of the things that in fact, I've talked about this in a couple shows in the past, not this specific story, but I know a couple of years ago, or maybe a few years ago at Penn State, they had some riots at Penn State. People were drinking, and they had, they bring the authorities in, try to quell the riot. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so kids that go to college, it's not necessarily true of every one, but for the most part, we think of college kids are the best and brightest. That's how they get into school. They want to go on to their careers. They want this higher education. So apparently being smart and being intelligent is not the criterion for emotional maturity, though, right?
It's not. Maturity and intelligence, they have some similarities and some differences. I don't think they're completely concurrent. I think that sometimes, you can be a very smart kid as far as school goes, but when it comes to, just conscious thoughts and decisions, you could still be impulsive. You're thinking, oh, I'm intelligent. I don't have to think as much as other people. And I don't know if that's the case with this guy, but yeah, that's what we're looking at here. Is this is a guy who had this may have been the only school football. He was a football player. He's on scholarship. This may have been the only opportunity he got to go to college.
Yeah.
I remember I had one of our favorite guests on the show, the basketball coach here, Coach Bernie Driscoll, and I think he listens a lot, and he gave me really wise words. He told me that often a lot of schools that he goes to when he recruits, they don't have college counselors, none. And then when I was in high school, we had an office full of them that helped all of us and made sure that we got there, and that often probably correlates with the fact that a lot of kids from my high school ended up going to college. But this guy, this may have been the only opportunity. They said, hey, do you want to come play football for us? And the Athletics got him in, and he just made a really horrible decision that was probably based off of his upbringing.
So you know what the thing is? We see this everywhere. It's not only here on the college level.
Yeah, this is no anomaly.
No, I mean, it happens in the pros. We had these scandals with people beating up their girlfriends and their wives. I mean, it's not like this happens just on a college level. But I'm thinking, as you were talking, is poor upbringing a legitimate excuse for bad behavior. I mean, and that's what we'd like to hear from the people listening today. And
Right.
hey, guys, we have these free tickets to give away for this this great band that's appearing at the State Theater this Saturday, State Theater in Boyertown, the Green River Tribute Band. We've got 12 tickets to give away. So if you just call on this topic and make a comment, we'll give you get a set of some tickets, right, Steve? I mean, that's a good thing in itself. If nothing else, call in to make a comment. You get free tickets to a
We would
concert.
love to hear your input. We are open to anything. Just feel free to call in 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859. I'd like to ask the question, so what do you think? The question here is, do you think that certain young kids who are 18 to 20 or 21-year-olds, should they be held accountable as adults, even though they're still in college and considered kids, even though by legal standards, a 21 is considered an adult? What do you think? What do you think, Nick?
Well, I mean, this is the issue. If somebody has enough intelligence, mental maturity, whatever, to commit a crime, does that necessarily then mean that they should be charged as an adult just because they can make the decision to commit the crime, or do we take into account the immaturity of the person because of their age or because of what we talked about earlier? I think you need to maybe mention it again about the what science says about when the executive function, your cerebral cortex, is
Right.
fully matured. I mean, if it's not at a certain age, can we hold people accountable when they're not physically or intellectually developed enough to make these decisions?
Right. And I think that, and what we say when we talk about brain development is that we understand that the brain never stops developing. Whenever you learn something, your brain improves. But this is something where he's 18 to 20. He knows that by now. It's not in high school. You punch somebody, you go to detention. And in this, you punch somebody, you can get arrested. And in this case, it just crashed and burned for him. And now he's going to face jail time. He could face even like 10 to 15 years if this goes bad enough. And it just makes me think that as far as decision-making goes, this kid knows that, you can't do that. You can't just go get in fights. You get arrested and you're going to be in the paper. But we brought up before, the hidden lubricant here is alcohol.
Right, exactly.
And we talked about this before the show. When people are inebriated, they have different types. There's and I'm not trying to be facetious here, there's like the emotional drunk where people, get upset and all that. There's people who are very, lax when they've had a little too much to drink. People who are very talkative and friendly and outgoing when they've had too much to drink. And there's some that are very combative and pugnacious. And if someone has something to drink and if they come into a house and say, hey, you have to get out, that's embarrassing in a way. You're questioning me. Hey, I'm a Kutztown football player. I shouldn't be treated like this. And that's what led to this fight. And one thing is, just to clarify, for those who don't know, in case people don't know, Justin Weeder was the one who really precipitated this whole thing by throwing the first punch. Cruz basically was the one who threw the punch when they were outside at the house. But now it's just, the question remains, should Cruz be charged as an adult or as some stupid kid? That's what the question we'd like to hear from you. And feel free to call in at 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859.
A lot of times people will say, we use these platitudes or quippy statements. We say, well, if you can do the crime, then you should do the time. I mean, it's an oversimplified way of dealing with issues that really have to do with development, with the development of people. Oftentimes, for any of the listeners who know that I do a show on Saturday morning where I interview teenagers, those kids are age 14 to 18. And many times we'll do a discussion, Steve, and I'll say to them, at 18, do you feel you can make that decision? They say, of course, I'm 18 years old, I can make that decision. I said, well, what if you were 14 or 15? Should you be able to? So they always come to an age where they think that they weren't ready to make the decision. And yet I've had 14-year-olds, had a kid on this past weekend, who could talk as well and as clear and as intelligent and as intellectual as anybody who was 35 years old. Every once in a while you run into somebody who's intellectually developed. And he was even making the point. He was saying, I know people say I'm smart and everything, he said, but I'm still a 14-year-old kid. We forget sometimes because somebody can speak well that they're still emotionally at the age at which they are.
Right. That's why we think it's intelligence and... what was it? Intelligence and drawing a blank here.
Emotional maturity?
Yes. Intelligence and emotions are two separate things.
Exactly.
And in this, I think it was purely emotions. I mean, he was probably they were offended, and I don't know why don't know why Cruz threw the punch.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was defending his teammate, if he wanted to look tough. We don't know, and like we said, the hidden variable here is the alcohol. We can probably there's nothing in there that says they were charged for underage drinking, but
Right.
it's a party, and I'm assuming that fraternity parties there's going to be some alcohol there, and if they're going to a party, maybe they pre-gamed or something. But this is something that where you need to look at, and whether he was intoxicated or not, or even buzzed, he can't use that as a defense in court. We talked about this before because in court they'll just say, all right, well, you were the one who decided to consume that much and put yourself in that state of mind, so you're being charged for what the actions you took in the state of mind that you were in.
People think that they don't think that they're impaired, Steve. When people drink,
Right.
whether it's adults
They
or
say,
kids,
oh,
it
I'm
doesn't-
fine, no, I'm good.
I'm
I'm
okay. Because in their mind, they still think that their executive functions, their ability to think straight, is still there. But we know that alcohol, even in a small level for a lot of people, can impair their judgment. It also impairs their motor skills, right? That's why we say don't drink and drive. And we have these alcohol limits that you're allowed to have before you're considered, drunk or over the limit, and you can be charged for doing something like that. I mean, so and then you compound this by underage drinking. It's bad enough that adults 21 and over drink and they get impaired, but now we're talking about people who are, pretty much underdeveloped intellectually and perhaps emotionally. I mean, I don't. So, what do you think about that? I mean, you live in the you're here on the campus. This is your world.
Right.
You see kids every day. Some are mature at 18. Some are totally immature at 22. Right.
Right, and you hit the nail right on the head. And one thing I would like to take from that is that another thing we've mentioned is that when you're kids, I'll admit it, I made some dumb decisions when I was younger. Kids don't use this brain. I'm pointing to my head, my brain. They don't use this muscle when they're growing up, and they think they're invincible. So this kid thought, okay, especially if he has some alcohol in him, he thinks, all right, you combine that, the kid probably thinks he can fly if you have enough. And drugs have that effect on you. They may tell you like they're a little voice whispering in your ear, saying, you're good, you're fine, you're feeling great. And this guy felt like he had a lot of adrenaline rush, like, all right, you're just going to all of a sudden quell that by saying, you have to leave, sorry, you're not allowed, and boom. Then Weeder throws the first punch. But then that begs another question. Do you think that this would have even happened if Weeder didn't throw that first punch? That's the good question there. I mean,
that's what I'm saying about the poor judgment. The first judgment is the one that precipitates every bad judgment after that, right?
Exactly.
First of all, drinking, if that preceded everything, or going to the party. I mean, it's a sequential thing. We just don't see it that way. But if you do make one bad choice, it usually leads to a second bad choice because now you have to deal with the consequences of your first bad choice, and then you go down the list.
And then you get charged for all of those, like what happened to Cruz. Cruz, they're probably thinking, all right, we're not going to give him a free pass because he had issue in October. Last October there was an issue, and I'm not going to dive into that, where he basically had another issue where he got a little combative with someone, and then this happened. So they're thinking, okay, this kid has a history of it. So that's probably what the grounds for which their argument's been based off of. But that's why we'd like to ask the question. Do you think that someone who is 18 to 22-year-old, since they have such lapses in judgment because they're still growing and aren't really fully mature yet, do you still think that they should be charged as an adult should? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Just call in at 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859.
And also, I think you should repeat again, they get a free gift here, right? Which is actually a cool thing. We have these tickets to give away, don't we? Sure.
We have tickets to our first guest that came on the show, the Green River Tribute Band. They come in. We have 12 tickets. They're playing in Boyertown this Saturday. And if you call in, we'll reserve them for you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And there's a reward for it. You get tickets to go see a CCR cover band. And you don't see, I'm a huge CCR fan, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So what's cool about today, Steve, I was talking to one of the kids on my show a couple of weeks ago, said that he really loved 80s music. Okay, so this kid's 15 years old, and he loves 80s music. And it started me thinking about how in the past, as your guest said, the only thing you could do was listen on the radio and wait for the next time it would be played. And so you would only know the music of your own time period unless there was a station playing different music. today, you guys you can like any music of any age and any time period, and you can like it because it's
at your fingertips.
It's at your fingertips for everything. I think sometimes we forget what an amazing transformation has taken place when it comes to music. That your generation, at your age, can like something that a big band music from the 1940s if you choose to do
right.
that.
And what I'm worried about is that 30 years from now they're going to be talking about, hey, you remember when Nicki Minaj was doing that, or when
Right,
Miley
exactly.
Cyrus was twerking. I'm like, wow, this was our culture. Remember that? I mean, I don't think they did this when you were in
No,
your 20s.
nobody was twerking when
No.
I was. But they did, the people of the time, though, did gyrations that were not allowed to be seen. I remember
Right.
reading that, Elvis Presley was not allowed to be filmed from the hips down, from his waist down, because he
Nothing more
moved
need to
his
be
hips.
said.
I mean, see how ridiculous it has become. And where we are now, people are exposed themselves, their bodies, or they show a lot of parts that you never would have seen before. So is the future going to get worse? Are we going to become more conservative over time? It's another good topic, really,
Yeah,
to talk
we have a
about,
lot to talk about. But yeah, we're just going back to the topic. We'll go on a quick commercial break here. We're going to talk, when we come back, we're going to reopen the discussion about what do you think, do you think that Angel Cruz should be charged for a minor sentence or a major sentence? We'd love to hear your thoughts on that when we get back.
It's Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us.
Have you ever wondered how we as a species were able to perform space travels? Hi, I'm Eric Eldred. All of the manned missions you've heard of would not be possible without the work of their predecessors, animals. Now, I am by no means a Trekkie, but to quote an ever-famous phrase from Star Trek, to boldly go where no man has gone before is something that could be used when space exploration began back in the mid-1900s. We became so fixated on knowing the unknown and to discover and explore that we ended up in an international race to space with Russia. Because no human had ever been in space before, it was hard to tell what effects weightlessness and being in space could have on the human body. So to find out what could happen, we used animals. Space is arbitrarily defined as the boundary between the atmosphere and space, approximately 68 miles from the surface, otherwise known as the Kármán line. If I were to ask someone what animals were the first to be in space, I think it'd be safe to assume they would guess a mouse, dog, monkey, or chimp. If you guessed any of those, you actually aren't far off. The first animals to reach space were fruit flies. On February 20th, 1947, the United States put fruit flies aboard captured German V-2 rockets to study radiation exposure at high altitudes. Much to the dismay of the United States, it was Russia that was able to have a living animal successfully orbit the Earth. Albert II, a rhesus monkey, flew 83 miles into the air on June 14, 1949, but he unfortunately died upon impact after re-entry. But it was in 1957 that Laika, a mostly Siberian husky from the streets of Russia, orbited the Earth. Although due to complications, she died a few days into her trip aboard Sputnik 2. Since then, multiple animals have been used to test the effects of space exploration on living creatures. Since 2011, NASA has put an end to manned missions. Because of their heroic efforts, unbeknownst to them, animals are the sole reason we've been able to come as far as we have.
Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us. Stay tuned to KUR for more telescopic topics, and for more information or to hear the segment again, click on the Telescopic Topics icon on the KUR website at www.kutztown.edu/KUR. Telescopic Topics is a production of the KU Physical Sciences Department and is recorded by the KU astronomy students in the studios of KUR. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University. KUR Kutztown. Hey everyone, welcome back to KU Live. The time right now is about 2:34 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, Steve Majeri, and I'm joined by my good friend Nick Lawrence from WEEU, here to continue the discussion about the updates on the Jackie Lithgow incident in Bloomsburg University, where last spring 4 football players went down to Bloomsburg, and one of them, Jackie Lithgow, a member of Bloomsburg University's fraternities, ended up getting hospitalized in a severe critical condition when he ended up. He's recovering slowly, and his family has a blog called prayforjackie.org. I have it up right here about how giving his updates on his road to recovery. And there's been a lot going on with what happened. He's lost a good part of his skull's been removed, and the people in charge of it, they could face some serious time. There's Angel Cruz is the one who punched Jackie Lithgow, and he may face he's got a long list of charges on here. I believe he was charged with, and it's right here, up with aggravated assault, flight to avoid apprehension, simple assault, disorderly conduct, and harassment. And what Cruz did was he punched him once, causing him to fall on his head on the pavement, resulting in permanent brain damage. We're not even sure if Lithgow may be able to walk again, and that's probably what a lot of his family, Jackie Lithgow's lawyers, are going to really pin him on, is the fact that you took away this guy's ability to walk because you were not allowed to go to a party. And that is the epitome of immaturity. And that's the biggest, the meat of our discussion is really with brain maturity. A friend of mine on the football team who is going to remain anonymous, he told me that it believes that he's young. Brains aren't fully developed yet as far as the premature stages for the cerebral cortex, and we believe that should be charged as a kid. Just give him a small sentence so he learns his lesson, because this guy had a real bad upbringing and all of that, and a broken home and no guidance. But we think that the other counter argument is that, hey, if you're going to do something and commit an adult crime, why shouldn't you be charged as an adult? But we want to know what your thoughts are. Do you think he should get a long sentence or a short sentence? Feel free to call in at 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859. And we have incentives today. If you call in, we have 12 tickets to the Green River Tribute Band that is playing in Boyertown this Saturday. They are a CCR cover band, and they're really great. We had Rick Noodles Orvin, the lead vocalist, come on the show earlier today, and he gave a great interview, very informative about it. And if you call in, all you got to do is give a comment, or if you just want your tickets, feel free to call in. We will hand out to the first 6 or 12 people that call in. If you want a pair, we can maybe see if we can get you 2. Mike, would we be able to give away 2 to one person?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I mean, going to a concert is a lot more fun when you go with somebody. So, yeah, feel free to call in, 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859. We have a lot to talk about. So, Nick, now we'll just talk about another thing we should mention in this, is that Cruz is a football player, and he's a public figure at a university. It doesn't matter if you're Division III. You are a representative of the school, but when you wear the jersey, and since he got arrested, that's what they've been talking about is, oh, he's an athlete, he's an idiot. And a lot of people think, how could this school allow somebody in there? Mm-hmm. And it brings a whole new discussion into the fold where you think, all right, they brought him in because of his athletic ability, not because of his maturity. And this certainly does not help, enforce that or reinforce that.
So what goes into recruiting somebody for college? Is it just their athletic ability? Do you take into account, is there a personality profile done with people that they're recruiting?
Yeah. They don't do background checks?
I was going to say it's the same thing in the NFL. I'm sure they do more background checks and things like that. But what are they hiring people for? What are they giving somebody a scholarship for to come to a college? Is it just for their play? Do they take into account the entire person, the whole person? There's a lot to this, Steve, that this case brings up that it's a good topic to talk about. I was just thinking as you're talking also, so he's going to be charged criminally,
right?
But he could be charged civilly as well. What about, okay, let's suppose Lithgow cannot walk the rest of his life, can't work the rest of his life. So we're going to have pain and suffering compensation. We have compensatory damages that an attorney could bring to the family or to him himself. So in addition to serving time perhaps in prison as a criminal penalty, what about the civil penalties? The loss of income that this young guy could have had if he can no longer work.
That is a very, very distinct possibility. That definitely can happen because it's been 8 months that he's been in the hospital. Mm-hmm. He's gaining motor functions, being able to move his arms and hands, but he's still bound to a wheelchair. He can't walk. And he had a large portion of his skull removed. He's had permanent brain damage.
Wow.
That may hurt. It's going to hurt him intellectually. He's going to go back to school at some point, but he's going to forever need. I honestly think that for the rest of his life, he's going to need help. He's going to be labeled as disabled, possibly mentally and physically.
Right.
And then they're thinking, this guy is going to have to pay some compensatory damages.
See, and it still raises, in my mind, the bigger question. I've had my own kids, and, maybe down the road you'll have your kids. Anybody who's a dad or a mom has kids, you're always worried about what they're going to do. And so it comes down to this judgment thing again. College is that place where most of us explore our first freedoms.
And you learn, like I said before, you learn what you should be doing, and some people have to learn that the hard way. By knowing what you shouldn't be doing, you learn what you should do. It's almost like a process of elimination. But this is obligatory. Getting in trouble for assault and all that, something nobody should do.
We all made bad choices, and we still make. I mean, everybody makes
Right.
bad choices, young or old. But most of us can look back over our lives and say, "Look, we made bad choices at this time in life, but fortunately, we learned from them, or we got through them without getting caught, or whatever." I'm sure every day, not only in this campus, but every campus across the country, kids are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, whether it's having sex, doing drugs, drinking, cheating on tests. It's a human condition. But how do you learn from that, and how do you get through it? And as parents, we just hope that our kids don't make choices that affect them dramatically the rest of their lives. As I'm sure the families of these kids now are wondering, what's going to happen to my kids, the ones that were hurt, as well as the ones that were the perpetrators.
Right.
You don't raise your kids thinking that these things are going to happen to them, especially or going to college and or going into the military. Young girls go into the military and they get raped by somebody. We don't think these things are going to happen, right? So it's judgment, though. It's all about where do we make these judgments? How do you make good judgment? And what should be the price of bad judgment, which is what you're asking.
And where do you draw the line with mistake and obviously like serious transgression that requires some sort of legal backlash?
Exactly.
Where do you think that jail is the right way to teach this guy the lesson?
Well, I think most people know that most people do not get better by being in jail. That's why we have such a high
recidivism.
Right, yeah, because if they were really being rehabilitated, or people would learn, quote, their lesson by being in jail, they wouldn't come out and commit crime again. It'd be the furthest thing from their mind. But actually, the recidivism rates are really, really high. So that's telling me jail is not the place to be rehabilitated.
Right. I think I might have read somewhere, I can check this at our next break, that a lot of people say that community service is often causing more of a learning process because it's more laborious than sitting in a jail cell all day. And that's what Cruz is. I have a feeling he is going to jail for at least 3 to 5 years. One judge, I think, wants to get him for double that sentence, and I'm sure the family is going to fight for that. The family is so shocked by this, and so it's so damaging to them that they couldn't even. Jackie's parents didn't even attend his arraignment when he was. He pled guilty, and they couldn't attend that because they couldn't look him in the eyes and have him look at them and tell them what he did wrong.
So what happens to young people when they go to jail for making a stupid choice?
Yeah.
He committed a crime, but then they go into a hardened place.
I think jail could be a lot more dangerous than the streets.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. So what happens now to the psychology of somebody who realizes they made a terrible mistake at this, this vulnerable time in your life as a young adult, and you're still learning the ropes, but you made a stupid choice that's a crime. You go into jail, now you're with hardened criminals in jail, and you feel that the society has wronged you, okay? So now you come out angry if you get out without
you could be
getting
covered in tattoos.
You see what I mean? It's a spiraling cycle that happens with the very first bad judgment. And I don't know how we can teach young people not to make those really, really bad choices in the beginning, because they lead to a series or consecutive choices that you have to make up for the bad choice. It's like taking a medication. You take a medication, supposedly helps you, right? But it has a lot of negative side effects. So you go to the doctor and say, you know what, I'm taking this stuff, makes me feel better, but the negative side effects are really bad. Well, here's another pill.
It's a Band-Aid solution.
You're right. So the pill is used to take away the side effects of the first pill you took, and then that pill that you're taking to take away the side effects has another set of side effects. You take another pill. So it's a spiraling cycle with behavior, Steve.
Right. And you also mentioned that it's a string of bad decisions. What if here's another decision, something we haven't brought into the fold. What about, do you think that it was the coaches made the bad decision to bring him to the program? What if this kid just has a really bad disposition? He's not really has the mindset or the temperament to handle a college environment. He's there for the football. And just to clarify, Coach Clements, who's the coach right now, did not recruit him, and the previous coach, Coach Drew Fulmer, did not recruit him. This was Coach Raymond Monica was the coach that recruited this guy, who's been gone for 2 years. He's down at Arkansas State University. And do you think it was his fault? I'm not saying it's Coach Monica's fault. I don't think he ever expected this to happen to Angel Cruz. But do you think that maybe he should have done more of a background check on that? Because like I mentioned before, the basketball coach here told me that he changed his recruiting from 2 years ago. What happened was his team was getting in trouble off the field, doing really dumb stuff, and so he cleaned house.
Yeah.
He kept, I think, 3 guys and recruited all new players, and told me he really wanted more. It didn't matter to him as much of how they performed as a student athlete, but just as a student and a person, especially because they represent this university, this community. And it shouldn't always be about that, because no one will care if you're good at, you run for 2,000 yards in a season and you go out and you do something really bad and hurt someone, like what Adrian Peterson did.
Right.
People aren't caring as much that he was a NFL MVP one year, holds the single-game rushing record, because he went out and physically abused his son. And this is in a much slower degree because he's a college player. But now people are thinking, oh, well, he was an athlete. But no, this is still a young kid who simply went out and acted on impulse, and of course had a little alcohol in him. We can come to that conclusion there had to be something controlling him. And now look at this kid's going to jail.
I think your points are really, really well taken there, Steve. So if you go back from the beginning, why do colleges and universities recruit people? Because they want to have a great team. Why do they want to have a great team? Because it brings in dollars. It brings in revenue.
It's a business.
Okay, so you can go. So are they just recruiting a quote player, or are they recruiting a person? They're recruiting the
Good
player,
question.
right? I mean, you think, just like you were saying to one coach, should recruit a person who plays well. But I don't think that's what the universities are thinking about. They're thinking, I'm recruiting a player. And they're not so much worried about the other part, except that they hope that they don't bring scandal to the university. Well, look what's happened here, and this is not the only time, obviously.
This is a Division II school, and usually this can lead to the firing of some coaches. I mean, at Division I, they've brought in players that have been arrested for just sickening things, and there's a long list you could find online about this. And coaches don't always get fired because of one thing, because they generate wins, and coaches need to know that the wins are what keep them. That's how they keep their job. Division II and Division III, it's different. It's good. There's more integrity, but yeah, that makes sense. Are they recruiting a student athlete or an athlete student? And I don't know how much academics has to do with this. I don't know about any of his grades, but as a person, as a good athlete, and as a person who represents this school and these school colors.
I think things are, if they haven't changed, there's a good chance that they may change with more things like this, that schools, universities, if they don't want to keep bringing bad publicity to the university, they have to take a better look at the kind of people that they're bringing in. Not only, as you say, they should be interested in the person. That they can play football or shoot a ball into the basket is a great thing. But
is this a good kid?
The school's about developing people, isn't it? Not just about developing athletes.
Right, it's not. This is not one of those dumb jock schools. We have excellent athletes, and I could speak. You speak with tons of them. I've spoken with our athletic director. We broke the list of number of them that are making on the dean's list this semester. Yeah, they've done great, and this is it's a stark anomaly, to be honest. The football program, that's one thing that I want to bring up. The football program, I'm not here to bash. I love the football players. I love all of those guys. They run a really great program with what Coach Clements did, but this is in the past. This has been a long string of incidents regarding the football team, and we didn't talk about this before the show.
Okay.
There was an armed robbery by 2 football players 2 years ago, and that 2 people that occurred 2 armed robberies by the same 2 people. One was in the Dietrich Hall, one of the dorms on campus, and then in the Cliffs, the Briarcliff apartments, which are off campus.
Okay.
And they were Shahad Smith and his cousin Kali Smith. And one of them had a gun. Kali Smith had a gun. They broke into the house and were looking for money and just valuables, and they took it and they left. And then the armed robbery on campus, where they looked for something, they found nothing, and they left. And Shahad Smith allegedly pistol whipped somebody. And then they were caught. The idiot Shahad Smith called a landline. He called the guy's landline number to say hey, I didn't do it. He called the guy back. Shahad Smith called the guy that he broke into his dorm and say, look, I didn't do anything wrong. Sorry about that. And wait, all of a sudden the guy knows who came in. So either way, yeah, he was an idiot. He got caught. Both of them are out of school. And Kali Smith, I think, he was sentenced to, I believe, around 10 to 15 years in prison.
Wow.
So that's the thing. This is the football program. These are athletes. This is the marquee sport at this school. These guys were recruited. Coaches went individually to these guys' high schools, said, hey, how would you like to play for Kutztown? Mm-hmm. We would love to have you here. I mean, they could say, the old feint that they use, they say, well, this is an excellent high-standing young man who's going to represent this school well and excel for us as a student first and an athlete second and help bring our program to new heights. It's like it's written out. And I'm not saying coaches do that, but that's what they want, and from a PR standpoint, that's what they're
So are they student athletes or athlete students?
Yeah, and
that's what your point is.
Yeah, and I don't think this is as much of an academic standpoint we're building this off of. It's just as a person, because that's what these are. These students, and there are theories about that correlate, not doing well in school with making bad decisions off of, in life. But that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about how is the school this? Did the school bring in too many bad eggs? Because he may be only one, but the fact is this is 3 or 4 that have done it.
So when schools recruit, though, they go to the coaches and the scouts go to football games, right?
They watch
and basketball games, and they watch these guys play, or the girls, whoever they happen to be, and then as a result of how they play, they approach them to recruit them. So
They'll go to their house,
right? But the standard is about how they're playing, which makes sense, but at the same time, what do they get to know the person? Do they get to know that kid? Do they get to know what that person's going to be like as a student?
And they recruit like 30. They bring in about 30, maybe a third of the team as freshmen. But I'm sure they recruit twice or even 3 times as many. They don't have the time to get to know these people on a personal basis. If you're going to be in an interview with a coach who wants to give you money to come to your school to play for him, you're going to be on your best behavior. And that's the problem. There has to be some way because here's what I'm bringing to, and then I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this. Feel free to call in at 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859. We just think that if these football players weren't even allowed on the program in the first point, that just takes away, in the sequences of what happened, of all these occurrences. If you take away the recruiting one, then Cruz doesn't come here. He doesn't go to Bloomsburg. He doesn't get arrested, and now the university doesn't get put in a false light.
So at the same point, though, we don't want to label all the football programs or basketball programs as bad, because
I'm not doing that at all.
There are kids who don't play those sports who get into equal amount of trouble too.
Right, and that's the only reason. To be honest, that's the only reason we're talking about this is because he's a football player.
Right.
He's if a student did something like this, it'd be in a news release on WFMZ or the Reading Eagle, and then it would fall under the pile, and we forget about it.
So we do. I guess we have some level of higher expectations for people who represent the school outwardly, like playing on a sports team.
And they should be above the general student body, because you're a public figure, and for him to go out and Cruz to go act like a child like that, I think they're going to use this against him. Saying you were told you were to act at a higher level. You're a student athlete, and you go out and go to a party and after a fight broke out, you continued. He didn't hit first, because that thing, Cruz didn't hit first. This is another bad choice. He didn't hit first. Weeder hit first. Some people didn't do their homework and completely misconceive this. Justin Weeder is the one who threw the first punch. Cruz, I don't know what happened. Apparently they just got shoved out. The video's on BloomUtoday.com. And this was last spring that we're talking about this. But now Cruz is the one who is what really made this such a really the downward is really what helped twirl the downward spiral, because if they were just football players, all right, football players kicked out of a party, I don't even know if that's newsworthy.
Yeah, it'd be interesting when it goes to trial. I don't think it's going to trial yet, right?
Not yet.
But as soon as it does, it'd be interesting to see what the witnesses, other people that were there, what they had to say, right? There would be a lot of people who have seen and will give an account of whatever the events were. It'll be interesting to see what those witnesses say versus how the lawyers defend Cruz.
And his teammates are going to have to defend him. I have a feeling the 2 football players that were expunged of any wrongdoing, Jake Wigan and Eric Condren, who are great kids.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate they were thrown into that. But they're probably going to be brought to talk and stand trial. And now they think, all right, are they going to defend their former teammate and their friend, or are they going to, say, hey, I'm not going to get, in trouble for lying, so I'm going to have to, tell the truth. And I have a feeling that what's going to bury him is this. He's going to go to jail regardless. There's overwhelming evidence on him on that. And the fact that there's going to be a lot more witnesses. The fraternity brothers outnumbered the football players. There's a lot of people who are going to go against him that are on the Bloomsburg side. And then on the Kutztown side, they have 2. So we have, I'd say, maybe 20 or something people say, all right, this guy punched this person and, knocked him to the ground, while someone else on the Kutztown side said, no, he didn't do that. But if it outnumbers the other side, you kind of picking up what I'm putting down here?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But we, the audience, understand these are just opinions we're throwing out there. We're basing our opinions based on what we've read and what's been reported so far. And I guess when the actual trial takes place, we'll have a better perspective on all the sides. We're dealing with the information that we have, not the information we don't have. Right, and it just seems like on the outside that the conclusions you've drawn there seem the way they may go up. But we won't know until the actual trial, Steve, as to what takes place. But, back to your original thought, somebody who's younger and scientifically or psychologically we know our physical brain or executive function, the cerebral cortex, not fully developed to a certain age, maybe 24, 25. Should people who commit crimes or do really
Within
bad
reason.
judgments,
Reason.
should they be held accountable on the same level as someone who has a fully developed brain? And then also, does poor upbringing justify a more lenient approach to something? Is poor upbringing an excuse for bad behavior? Because those are your primary questions, aren't they?
And like I don't believe a lot in the poor upbringing. And then we also love to hear your thoughts on this. 610-683-4859. That's 610-683-4859. If you call in, we'll give you we have 12 tickets to a Green River Tribute Band. They are a cover band of CCR. And they'll be playing this Friday or Saturday, I believe, at Friday or Saturday. I'll check with my producer at Boyertown. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But like we were saying, I don't believe in the bad upbringing, because no matter what your upbringing is, that's still a personal choice. You're 18 years old. You say you're a mature adult. If you get built off of that basis in your argument, then you should have made the adult decision to walk away. Because no one back cornered Cruz. He wasn't in fight or flight. Mm-hmm. He was out in the streets. He could have left. The situation had already exacerbated drastically. He could have just turned around and walked and said, I'm not having anything to do with this. But no, he wanted to stay right in the maelstrom and just cock back and put the first kid that he saw in front of him, knock him out.
Well, I guess that's what remains to be found out. I mean, the intention after the fact when you recount something that took place while you were drinking versus the way it was when it was happening could be very different. Because your alcohol impairs our judgment. It probably also, on some level, impairs our memories too, to a degree.
Does. It controls your words, thoughts, actions, and memories.
So
too.
there's a lot to this. I know we're coming up on the end of the show, but I think this has been an incredible discussion today, Steve. I'm certainly have enjoyed being here with you, and I'll look forward to coming back the next time. And maybe you have a final thought for our audience before we have to say goodbye today.
I do. I would like to hear people's thoughts. I think, hey, Nick's been with me all semester. What do you think on his input? How's he done? We would love to hear. You could send me an email at smaug910@kutztown.edu. That's smaug910@live.kutztown.edu. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think Nick has done. He's brought a whole new element. He's, got years of experience for us. He's a professional interviewer, and he works for WEEU in Reading. He just knows his business very well. If you have any thoughts on how he's made this show better in any way, or just how he's impacted it, just feel free to shoot me an email, or of course contact Mike, our producer, or just go on our Facebook page. Anyway, that's all the time we have. It's about 3 p.m. now. I'm Steve Majiri with Nick Lawrence saying have a good evening.
KUR Kutztown.